Why would someone stay in a relationship that is clearly hurting them? From the outside it seems simple. Just leave. You deserve better. Why are you still there? But if you have ever been inside one of these relationships, or if you are inside one right now, you know that it is not simple at all. Leaving feels impossible in a way that is almost impossible to explain to someone who has never experienced it. And the reason it feels impossible is not weakness. It is not stupidity. It is not low self-worth, though people will tell you that is all it is. The real reasons people stay in relationships that are destroying them go far deeper than any of those simple explanations. They are rooted in biology, in psychology, in the deepest patterns of how human beings form attachment and process fear. By the end of this video you will understand exactly why people stay, and if you recognize yourself in any of this, you will finally be able to stop judging yourself for it. To understand why people stay in damaging relationships, you first need to understand what happens in the brain and body when a deep attachment bond is formed, because this bond does not behave rationally, and it does not break easily just because the conscious mind decides it should. When we form a close bond with another person, our brain begins to treat that person as a core part of our survival system. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, creates feelings of attachment, safety, and belonging that become associated specifically with that individual. Our nervous system learns to regulate itself in their presence. Their voice, their touch, their proximity, all of these begin to function as biological regulators of our own internal state. This is why being with our attachment figure, even a damaging one, can produce genuine feelings of calm and safety, and why being separated from them can produce feelings of panic and physical distress that are completely out of proportion to what the rational mind knows about the situation. When people say they know they should leave but they cannot, this is often what they are describing. Not a failure of willpower. Not stupidity. A nervous system that has been biologically wired to treat this specific person as a source of safety, even when that person is simultaneously the source of the greatest danger. One of the most powerful psychological forces keeping people in damaging relationships is something economists call the sunk cost fallacy, but in relationships it operates at an emotional level that makes it far more powerful than any financial decision. The sunk cost fallacy is the tendency to continue investing in something because of what you have already put in, rather than evaluating whether continued investment makes sense going forward. In relationships this sounds like, but I have given so many years to this. It sounds like, we have been through so much together. It sounds like, I cannot walk away from everything we have built. The past investment, the years, the sacrifices, the love, the hope, the shared history feels like it would be rendered meaningless by leaving. As if staying is the only way to honor what was real about the relationship. What the mind struggles to accept is that the years already spent are gone regardless of what you do next. Staying does not recover them. It only adds more time, more sacrifice, and more damage to the already significant cost. But this logic, while entirely rational, runs directly against one of the most deeply wired human psychological tendencies, the need to feel that our suffering had a purpose, that our investment was not wasted, that the story we lived through was worth something. And that need is far more powerful than most people realize. We have talked before on this channel about intermittent reinforcement, the variable reward schedule that makes toxic relationships as addictive as gambling. But in the context of why people stay, it deserves its own deep examination, because it is arguably the single most powerful mechanism keeping people trapped. Intermittent reinforcement happens when reward, love, warmth, affection, connection is delivered unpredictably. Sometimes after good behavior, sometimes after conflict, sometimes for no apparent reason at all. This unpredictability does not reduce the brain's desire for the reward. It dramatically intensifies it. The brain becomes hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signals of the reward, investing enormous energy in trying to understand what produces it, becoming almost obsessively focused on the person who controls its delivery. This is why people in toxic relationships often describe an intensity of feeling, of love, of connection, of need that they have never experienced in healthier relationships. The relationship does not feel less significant because it is painful. It feels more significant. More consuming, more real. And walking away from that intensity, back into the relative quiet of a life without that constant chemical rollercoaster, can feel like walking away from the most alive you have ever felt. even when that aliveness was destroying you. One of the least discussed reasons people stay in damaging relationships is that leaving requires them to completely reconstruct their identity, and that is one of the most psychologically demanding things a human being can do. When you have been in a relationship for a long time, your sense of self becomes deeply intertwined with the relationship itself. You think of yourself as part of a unit. Your social world, your daily routines, your future plans, your sense of who you are, all of it has been built around the presence of this person. Leaving does not just mean losing them. It means losing the version of yourself that existed within the relationship. It means facing the terrifying question of who you are without them. And for people who were already uncertain of their identity before the relationship, which is common among people who end up in damaging dynamics, that question can feel genuinely unanswerable. So they stay. Not because the relationship is good, but because the relationship, however painful, provides the answer to that question. It tells them who they are, where they belong, what their life looks like. And the emptiness of not knowing, the formlessness of starting again from scratch, is in some ways more frightening than the known pain of staying. Fear of loneliness is one of the most universal and most underestimated forces keeping people in relationships that are hurting them. And it is important to be honest about this fear, not to judge it but to understand it, because it is far more psychologically complex than it appears on the surface. The fear of being alone is not simply the fear of an empty house or a quiet evening. For many people, it is the fear that alone is what they deserve. That if this relationship ends, even a painful, damaging relationship, there will not be another one. That they are not the kind of person who gets to be chosen again. That the damage done to their self-worth inside this relationship has somehow revealed a truth about their fundamental lovability, and leaving will only confirm it. This fear is almost never conscious. It does not announce itself clearly. Instead, it shows up as practical concerns: who will I spend the holidays with? What will people think? How will I manage alone? These practical concerns are real. But underneath them, for many people, is the deeper terror: what if I am alone, not because I left but because I am someone who ends up alone? And staying, however painful, at least provides the temporary answer that they are not. When you have been in a damaging relationship long enough, something deeply insidious happens to your psychological baseline. The pain stops feeling like pain. The treatment that would have been obviously unacceptable at the beginning of the relationship gradually becomes your new normal. What started as shocking becomes familiar. What started as intolerable becomes tolerated. And once something becomes normal, once your nervous system and your mind have recalibrated around it, you lose the ability to use your own discomfort as a signal that something is wrong. This normalization is particularly powerful when the damaging relationship mirrors dynamics from your family of origin. When the way you are being treated now rhymes with the way you were treated as a child, even if you do not consciously recognize the similarity, it feels not just normal but fundamentally true. Like this is simply what relationships are. Like this is simply what love looks like. The most devastating effect of this normalization is that it does not just affect your current relationship. It affects your entire sense of what you deserve, your entire template for what is acceptable, what is loving, and what is worth leaving. And rebuilding that template, after years of having it warped, is some of the deepest and most important psychological work a person can do. Perhaps the most heartbreaking reason people stay in relationships that are destroying them is hope. Not naive hope. Not stupid hope. But the very human, very understandable, very painful hope that the person they fell in love with, the person they saw in the beginning, in the good moments, in the brief windows of warmth, is the real person. And that eventually, somehow, they will find their way back to that person permanently. This hope is not irrational. It is based on real evidence. The good moments happened. The warmth was real, at least as an experience. The person they love does exist, in flashes, in glimpses, in moments that make leaving feel like abandoning someone who needs them. What hope struggles to account for is that a pattern tells more truth than a moment. That the good moments, however real, are not the full picture, and that continuing to invest in a hope that has repeatedly failed to materialize is not love. It is grief wearing love's face. The grief of a person who fell in love with a possibility and is still, years later, waiting for that possibility to become permanent. Processing that grief, truly accepting that the person you hoped for may not be who you are actually with, is one of the most painful and most necessary steps toward being able to leave. It would be incomplete and unfair to talk about why people stay in damaging relationships without acknowledging the very real practical and external barriers that make leaving genuinely difficult, not just psychologically but logistically and materially. Financial dependence is one of the most significant. When one partner controls the finances, when leaving would mean having no money, no home, and no immediate way to survive, staying is not just a psychological choice. It is a practical reality. Children create another layer of genuine complexity. The fear of what a custody battle might look like, the concern about what separation will do to the children, the practical reality of co-parenting with someone who has been harmful, these are not excuses. They are real, legitimate considerations that make an already difficult situation genuinely harder. Social and family pressure, particularly in cultures or communities where leaving a relationship carries stigma, shame, or real social consequence, can make the cost of leaving feel impossibly high. And for people who have been isolated by a controlling partner, whose friendships and family connections have been systematically eroded, the practical question of where to go and who to turn to can feel genuinely unanswerable. These barriers do not trap people because they are weak. They trap people because they are real. And addressing them requires not just psychological courage but practical support that many people simply do not have access to. Understanding why people stay is only half the picture. The other half, the more important half, is understanding what actually creates the conditions for people to leave. Because people do leave. Every day, people who have been told they would never be able to do it find the capacity to go. And the research on what makes that possible is both illuminating and hopeful. The single most consistent factor in people successfully leaving damaging relationships is connection, specifically, the presence of at least one person outside the relationship who sees clearly what is happening and maintains a non-judgmental, consistent presence. Not someone who pressures them to leave. Not someone who gives ultimatums or expresses frustration at how long it is taking. But someone who simply stays. Who keeps the door open. Who says, "I am here regardless of what you decide." That consistent external connection does two things. It provides practical support, a person to call, a place to go. But more importantly, it provides a reality check, a reflection of who the person actually is outside the relationship, a reminder that they are valued beyond their role within the damaging dynamic. The second factor is reaching what researchers call the tipping point, the moment when the cost of staying finally, genuinely outweighs the cost of leaving in the person's own internal calculation. This moment cannot be forced from the outside. It arrives from within. And when it does, it tends to produce action that surprises even the person taking it. If you are watching this video and recognizing yourself, if you are currently in a relationship that you know is damaging and you cannot understand why you cannot leave, I want to say something to you directly. You are not weak. You are not stupid. You are not lacking in self-respect. You are someone whose nervous system, whose attachment system, whose identity, and whose hope have all been shaped by an experience that was designed, consciously or not, to make leaving feel impossible. And feeling like leaving is impossible does not mean that it is. The first thing that helps is not making a plan to leave. The first thing that helps is talking to one person you trust, one person outside the relationship, and telling them the truth about what has been happening. Not to ask them to fix it. Not to get permission to leave. Just to have your reality witnessed by someone outside of it. That witnessing, that having one person see clearly what you are living, begins to loosen the grip of the normalization. It begins to rebuild the part of you that knows this is not okay. And that part, once it starts to wake up, tends to keep growing. You do not have to have it all figured out. You do not have to know exactly how you will leave or what comes next. You just have to let one person in. Start there. Staying in a relationship that is hurting you does not make you a victim of your own choices. It makes you human. It makes you someone with an attachment system, with a history, with hope, with fear, and with a nervous system that was doing its best to keep you safe using the tools it had. None of that is a character flaw. All of it is something that can be understood, worked with, and eventually moved through. You deserve a relationship where you do not have to choose between love and safety, where being cared for does not come with a cost, where you can be fully yourself without bracing for what comes next. That kind of relationship exists. And it becomes possible the moment you really decide that you are worth it. If this video helped you understand yourself or someone you love, subscribe right now. Every single week we go this deep into the psychology of what makes us human. The things most people feel but nobody explains honestly. Drop a comment below and tell me what finally made you realize it was time to leave. Or if you are still inside it, what is the one thing keeping you there? I read every single comment and your honesty might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And next week, we are going somewhere even deeper. The psychology of why we repeat the same mistakes in every relationship we enter. Why the same patterns follow us no matter how many times we start over. And what it actually takes to finally break the cycle at its root. That video is coming next. You do not want to miss it. See you there.